With just 25 days until Iowa, Donald Trump is questioning if Ted Cruz is eligible to be president.
Everybody tells me he had a joint passport.
We will have full reaction.
We can find ways to reduce gun violence consistent with the Second Amendment.
Then President Obama continues his assault on your Second Amendment rights. Dana Lash and Juan Williams are here tonight to debate.
Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all.
And Donald Trump releases a new ad slamming Hillary Clinton's record on women's rights. All of that plus RNC Chairman Reince Priebus will be here. Hannity starts right here, right now.
And welcome to Hannity Tonight. With the Iowa caucuses looming, Donald Trump continues to raise questions over whether his top challenger, Ted Cruz, is eligible to run for president. Watch this.
Do you believe Senator Ted Cruz is a natural-born citizen?
I don't know, to be honest. I'd go and seek a declaratory judgment if I was Ted.
What does that mean?
It means you go to court.
Which court?
You go to federal court to ask for what's called a declaratory judgment. You go in seeking the decision of the court without a court case. You go right in. You go before a judge. You do it quickly. If Ted should eke it out, and I hope that doesn't happen, and he's got this cloud over his head, I don't think it's going to be possible for him to do very well.
All right, earlier today, Senator Ted Cruz responded directly to these allegations, telling reporters that he won't be taking any legal advice from Donald Trump. Watch this.
It's not anything that's going to happen, and I'm not going to be taking legal advice anytime soon from Donald Trump.
Senator,
my response when Donald tossed this attack out there was simply to tweet out a video of Fonzie from Happy Days jumping a shark and to move on. These attacks, this is the silly season of politics, and there's a reason for it.
Joining us now with reaction, our former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush, constitutional law attorney Tom Dupree, Fox News senior correspondent Geraldo Rivera, and the national spokesperson for the Trump campaign, Katrina Pearson, is with us. Good to see you all. All right, let's just go to the law because that's where it matters. The relevant code is 8 U.S. Code 1401, and it says the following as it relates to nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. The following shall be nationals and citizens, and it goes on, a person born outside of the United States and its outlying possessions of parents, one of whom is a citizen of the U.S., who has been physically present in the U.S. or one of its outlying possessions for a continuous period of 1 year prior to the birth of such a person, and the other of whom is a national but not a citizen of the United States. Let's go to Section G. It says, a person born outside of the geographical limits of the U.S. and its outlying possessions of parents, one of whom is an alien, and the other a citizen of the U.S. who prior to the birth of such person was physically present in the United States or its outlying possessions for a period or periods totaling not less than 5 years, at least 2 of which were after attaining the age of 14 years. Geraldo.
What is the glaring omission, Sean? You have to see that what is not in those statutes. What is not in those statutes is the definition of a natural-born citizen.
You got to
go back again to the Naturalization Act of 1790. Ted Cruz mentioned the Naturalization Act of 1790 when he says 3 years after the Constitution is ratified, an act is passed by Congress that spells out that the child of a citizen, wheresoever born, is a natural-born citizen. 1790. 5 years later, Senator Cruz conveniently does not cite the amendment to the Naturalization Act of 1790. 1795, it says the child of a citizen born wheresoever born is a citizen, not a natural-born citizen, just a citizen. Why did they omit that phrase? I submit
the original meaning
of, hang on, to you that it should be litigated.
The Naturalization Act of 1790, enacted by the first Congress, you're right, and by the way, signed into law by President George Washington, who presided over the Constitutional Convention. The act provided that children born outside the United States to American citizens were, quote, natural-born U.S. citizens at birth.
If Ted Cruz had run for president between 1790 and 1795, you'd be right.
No,
but the act
it
was amended 5 years later.
Which actually helps.
What did they delete?
Hang on a second.
They deleted the phrase natural-born.
The act also provided the same thing. If anything, that was the more stringent requirement.
This will be litigated by the federal courts. It won't be a declaratory judgment. Trump is wrong about about that. You just can't ask a court for a declaratory judgment. There has to be a lawsuit brought. It can be brought by Trump. Trump has standing. He's personally aggrieved by Ted Cruz running
Congress, when they had changed the law, they made it easier. They made it easier for American citizen parent to pass birthright citizenship,
but not to be president.
Let's go. Tom, we'll go to you. You're the other lawyer on the panel. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Sean, there's no question whatsoever that Ted Cruz is constitutionally eligible to serve as president of the United States. Frankly, it's not even a close question. There is abundant evidence of exactly what our founders meant when they used the term natural-born citizen and they put it in the Constitution. It means someone who is a United States citizen at birth, regardless of where they're born geographically. If they're a United States citizen at birth, that is to say, if they have a United States citizen parent, they're a United States citizen, they're constitutionally eligible to serve. That's the beginning and the end of this debate.
Why did they exclude the phrase natural born when they amended the Act, Counsel, 5 years later?
I don't look at what happened years down the road. What I look at is what our founders meant. They can't override the Constitution. They can't override the Constitution. And so if you look at what subsequent Congress said or what a Harvard Law School professor said in the 1970s, that doesn't supersede what the founders put in the Constitution. And the meaning of natural-born citizen abundantly clear.
The founders were still alive and still functioning in 1795, and I submit to you they left out that phrase for a reason. They wanted a natural-born citizen with all the immigrants coming to this country.
You're misinterpreting this.
Let a judge decide.
If you go to our good friend Andy McCarthy, as he pointed out, the amendment 5 years later made it easier to define natural-born citizen.
Except for the person running for president, Sean. 35 years old, a resident for 14 years, and a natural-born citizen, not just a citizen.
But now I go back to 8 U.S. Code 1401, which I just read, and that points it literally defined the status of Ted Cruz and his parents.
I say that.
All right,
Donald
Katrina,
Trump
let's bring you in here. Where is Donald Trump on this? He's saying he should get a declaratory judgment. You just heard Ted Cruz saying he's not going to take legal advice from Donald Trump. What's your reaction?
Well, first I'd like to say all you have to do, Sean, is take a look around and find out that the Constitution is being trampled daily in this country. So we really need to take a step back and see what's going on here. But I would also like to say that the only reason we're having this discussion is because the Cruz campaign responded to a media report that said Donald Trump brought this issue up when in fact he did not. So the question here really isn't the birther question, which a lot of people are asking. Everyone knows Senator Cruz was born in Canada. No one's even questioning the fact of whether or not he's a citizen. Everyone knows that he's a citizen of the United States and just renounced Canadian citizenship about 18 months ago. The question here, though, is, to Geraldo's point, is whether or not the DNC and Hillary Clinton will bring a lawsuit, because everyone agrees, even legal scholars.
So you're saying, just to be clear, you're saying Donald Trump is not questioning it. He's saying he's only bringing it up. You're saying because he thinks Hillary will bring it up.
Absolutely. He has said, he said he talked to Ted, and Ted has made arguments, and he agrees with that. He's just concerned on the other side, and that's why he says, let's get this put to bed.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Geraldo here.
I see Donald saying, I'm only saying this because the Democrats...
All right, Tom, let me go back to you. What about 8 U.S. Code 1401? Because it seems very clear in those codes that they were talking directly about somebody like Ted Cruz. It seems incontrovertible to me.
I completely agree with you, Sean. I think if you look at the Constitution, you look at the statutory law that you mentioned, and you look at our nation's history and traditions, there are many people, Barry Goldwater, the first Governor Romney, John McCain, all of whom were fully eligible to serve as president. Barry Goldwater was born in U.S.
territory. It was not a state, but it was U.S. territory. Wrong on John McCain. Where was John McCain born? Not in the Canal Zone. He was born in the Panama Canal Zone. I was there at the time,
of the geographic
in the 70s when they were negotiating. The Panama Canal Zone is U.S. territory at that time.
All right, let's go. It seems...
But Sean, here's the question. The question is, can Hillary Clinton bring a lawsuit if Ted Cruz becomes the nominee?
Yeah, but you know what?
If that answer is yes,
I thought Andy McCarthy brought up a good point. There were numerous lawsuits that were brought up as it related to Barack Obama's citizenship. We barely heard about them, and they were dismissed.
Right,
I don't think it's going to be that big a distraction.
But you and I both know that John McCain or Mitt Romney wasn't a threat to the Democratic Party. In this case, the Republican nominee will be a threat to the party.
I think that Senator Ted Cruz is a great conservative who can run against an incumbent liberal, Justin Trudeau, in Canada.
Oh, good grief. All right. I don't know what to make of all this. All right, everyone's gone birther here on us. Thank you all for being with us. And coming up, President Obama continues his assault on your Second Amendment rights during a town hall event. Dana Lash, Juan Williams react to those plans, and then later tonight.
Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all. Let's keep fighting for opportunity and dignity.
Donald Trump releases a new ad slamming Hillary Clinton's real record on women's rights. Also, Rudy Giuliani reacts to new reports out of Europe claiming that some of the men who carried out a wave of New Year's Eve sexual assaults in Germany are in fact Syrian refugees.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Patricia Stark. President Obama making his case for gun control in a televised town hall meeting. In an attempt to curb mass shootings, the president is using executive action to expand background checks to include sales on the internet and at gun shows. However, an NRA spokesman tells Fox News it wouldn't make us safer since the gunman behind several recent shootings passed the background checks. The mom of the so-called affluenza teen has reported to a North Texas jail. Tonya Couch faces charges of hindering the apprehension of a felon. Tonya and her son, Ethan, fled to Mexico while prosecutors investigated whether he had violated his probation. He was dubbed the affluenza teen after escaping prison time for killing 4 people while driving drunk. Ethan Couch remains in a Mexican prison. I'm Patricia Stark, and now back to Hannity. For all your headlines, log on to foxnews.com.
Welcome back to Hannity. So the president is continuing his assault on your Second Amendment rights. Earlier tonight at a town hall event on gun control, the president had this to say. Take a look.
And by the way, there's a reason why the NRA is not here. They're just down the street. And since this is the main reason they exist, you'd think that they'd be prepared to have a debate with the president.
They haven't been to the White House for 3 years.
We've invited them. We've invited them.
So right now, tonight, you're saying you would be welcome to meet.
We have invited them repeatedly. But if you listen to the rhetoric, it is so over the top and so overheated, and most importantly, is not acknowledging the fact that there's no other consumer item that we purchase.
So is that an open invitation?
Hold on a second. Let me finish this point, Cooper. There's nothing else in our lives that we purchase where we don't try to make it a little safer if we can.
Now, despite the president's political grandstanding, an Associated Press fact check on his proposals show that they will do little to nothing to prevent the real problem, and that's keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. Here with reaction, the host of Dana on the Blaze, Dana Lash, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. The AP said none of what he is proposing would have stopped any of these examples, any of these recent attacks.
What did he say? He said, let's stop arguing about the past and let's do something to prevent such incidents in the future. Let's make guns less accessible to bad people.
But here's the point. None of his proposals, as the AP pointed out, would have prevented any of the mass shootings that have prompted this discussion.
If that's all you're concerned about, fine. But I'm concerned about you and me walking out tonight, and we don't want some idiot
I have an answer.
with a gun. More guns.
No. How about this?
Everybody
if you don't want, get rid of gun-free zones. For example, I would put in school retired policemen and retired servicemen and women to protect children in case something happens. How's that? You agree?
I don't mind. Look, I just don't want us to become gun-saturated, which is, I think, your solution. And let me just say, you described the president as grandstanding. Do you know that overwhelmingly Republicans and gun owners support universal background checks, and the president's not even going that far.
We already have them. All right, let me go to Dana. Dana, the biggest salesperson for guns in this country is Barack Obama. Since he's been president, get this, Smith & Wesson, the #1 gun seller in the country, their shares have gone up a whopping 952%. Ruger, up 911%. Apple, only 773%. I think you can thank Obama for that and the threat that people feel.
You absolutely can. Sean, do you remember when he and Josh Earnest were telling everyone, all right, now Thanksgiving, you go home, you talk to your family members about gun control, and then the Friday right after, everybody went out and bought firearms. 2015 is being called the year of the gun. He is the best firearm salesman ever. And the AP, I can't even believe I'm saying this, the AP is actually correct. There's nothing that he would have proposed that would have made it better. But you know what, Sean? He always talks about how he wants to help the people who have been affected by gun violence, but all this president has done is enable the repeat offenders and the gangbangers and everyone else, those people who drive the gun homicide rate.
You know what? You two are so far gone on this issue. I can't get it. You know, the president has done zero. He has not denied anybody the opportunity to go buy a gun in this country.
Making it harder.
No. And we live in a period where 100,000 people in the last 10 years killed by guns, millions assaulted, hundreds of thousands of suicides,
I see your list.
500,000
Can I ask you a question?
guys say, oh, don't do anything. Leave it alone.
No, Juan, that's not what anyone is saying at all.
President Crybaby. Let's go back. I thought these were crocodile tears. The president out there crying. Do you realize the day that James Foley was beheaded? Do you remember that day?
Yes.
And he went out there and he gave a 30, 40-second, comment, and then he raced off. He didn't want to be late for his tea time. Right. You know, I'm sorry. I'm not buying it.
So you want to weigh injustice and tragedy, but let me just tell you something.
Yeah.
When you see little children slaughtered, maybe it touches your heart,
Hey,
Sean.
Juan, it touches my heart so much that I think every school district in the country needs retired policemen and military professionals.
What about the defensive gun uses? Do you realize that the CDC and the National Research Institute came out with a study showing that by large defensive gun use outweighs criminal use? You're looking at anywhere from 500,000 to 3.3 million instances of defensive gun use a year. Why do we not have a press conference where the president is surrounded by the people who successfully defended themselves using a firearm?
Hey,
my life was protected by one. The people at Clackamas Mall, Juan, their lives were protected too.
Because your side of this argument, the NRA and their acolytes, all say we don't want gun research done by any reputable group that could
be a government agency controlled by the president that can manipulate it to be whatever he wants.
You don't want to know
we have independent firearm research. We also have uniform crime reports from the FBI. You just don't like the truth, Juan.
Let me ask Juan this question. Juan, this is the second or third time that he's mentioned Chicago, and I'm thinking, we've had weekend after weekend after weekend. His home city, 40, 50 people involved in shootings. Where has he been? Why has he been so late to this? Why then should we believe he's sincere when all these years have gone by? 2009 and 10, they had control of the House and Senate. They didn't do a thing on guns.
Well,
why?
That's a fair point. The Democrats had the Senate and were unable to get anything done. But why?
Had the House
because of the power of the NRA to punish politicians.
They had all the power. Wait a minute. They had all the power.
Let me just say, where's all the Republicans? How is it that all the Republicans so fearful of the NRA that they won't speak up for this murder, massacre that's a common part of American life every day?
He took the assault weapons ban portion out of the gun bill. He took Dianne Feinstein's addendum out of a bill. Harry Reid's not a Republican. He's a Democrat.
Good point. Your response?
Oh, this feeds exactly what I was saying, Dana. The NRA has been able to shut down Democrats in conservative states because they are afraid of the NRA's economic
so they've got
is made up of members.
It's
of
just
people who pay
to
dues.
me, this is when Republicans complain
you want to know why I'm a proud
special interest?
You want to know why I'm a proud NRA member? I'm a proud NRA member because there's no group in America that teaches gun safety more than the NRA.
Yeah, that's years ago. Now they're an extremist group that wants to have everybody to have a gun, and to Dana's point, doesn't want research.
When is the last time you donated to Project Child Safe, Juan? If you're so concerned about gun safety, how much have you donated to Project Child Safe?
More than gun safety, I'm concerned about too much easy access,
law department offices throughout the country.
I don't want every kid to have a gun.
Child Safe?
I've had a gun since I'm 11 years old.
11 years old?
I've carried a gun all my adult life. All my adult life.
Education is the antidote to ignorance.
My parents taught me how to shoot. That's right. They brought me to a professional and I learned how to shoot.
Where did you grow up? In the woods?
I grew up in Long Island, New York. No woods.
What is going on with this guy? No, someone should have arrested you. That's what
if you're in a room, here's my last question. If you're in a room and God forbid a shooting occurs and I carry a gun, do you want me in that room with you to protect you?
Yes. What are you talking about?
More guns, more safety.
No,
that's right.
That wasn't the
Checkmate.
logical conclusion.
Checkmate. Coming up next tonight here on Hannity.
Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all. Let's keep fighting for opportunity and dignity.
All right, a new Donald Trump ad exposes Hillary Clinton's real record on women's rights. We'll have reaction. Plus, very disturbing reports out of Germany tonight claiming that some of the men that carried out those dozens of New Year's Eve sexual assaults on women are refugees. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani will be here with reaction, and RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, he'll weigh in. And welcome back to Hannity. Democratic favorite Hillary Clinton recently released a controversial new political ad featuring a child supporter who calls herself, quote, a little feminist. Really? What's this?
My name is Olivia. I'm a little feminist growing up to help all women with equal rights. I have 2 dads. I go to a school for kids with learning disabilities, and I wish that there were more public schools that can help kids with dyslexia like me. I hope you can be the first woman president of the whole United States.
So as Hillary plays the feminist agenda card with that new ad, Donald Trump posted an Instagram video showing that Clinton may not be the model of modern feminism that her campaign makes her out to be. Take a look.
Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights once and for all. Let's keep fighting for opportunity and dignity.
Here with reaction, Republican strategist Mercedes Schlapp and Fox News contributor Ebony Williams. You know, our mutual friend Kirsten Powers wrote a really powerful column comparing Bill Cosby and Bill Clinton. And in it, she actually says we're a society that has a blessedly lower tolerance for sexual assault and harassment than in prior years. Good news for America, bad news for the Clintons. We saw what happened with Bill Cosby. Now you see this issue reemerging through Donald Trump about Hillary Clinton. How big an issue is it?
Well, it's certainly an issue. She's going to have to address it. Now, the lawyer in me has to make a distinction, respectfully to Kirsten's post there. You know, Bill Clinton, certainly you could say he was a harasser, clearly an admitted adulterer. But Cosby, I mean, we're talking about a rapist. So that just a bit of a distinction.
But Juanita Broderick, we're talking about Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, and Juanita Broderick.
Sure.
All charging sexual
harassment.
assault.
Yeah.
No, not harassment.
Paula Jones, Paula Jones said harassment.
Okay,
yeah.
He exposed himself and said to kiss it or touch it or whatever he said.
Okay, sure.
In the case of Willie and Juanita, we're talking about assault.
Sure.
So is it any different than the Bill Cosby analogy?
Well, only in the sense that right now Cosby's actually facing criminal charges, and we just didn't see that from Clinton. But I don't want to get caught up in the minutiae of that so much.
Is that minutia? Wait a minute.
Yeah, I do.
You know, Juanita Broderick recently said, you know what? I've thought about it every day since. My life has not changed.
Well, and I empathize with that. I mean, certainly we don't want to see any woman suffering at the hands of type of male exploitation, and if it's abuse or harassment or rape. So absolutely, that's certainly a real issue.
Hillary Clinton this year said that these women of sexual abuse, victims of sexual abuse, Mercedes, should be believed. Did she say something that's going to come back and haunt her?
I think so, especially because our society has evolved. I mean, what you're seeing in the Bill Cosby case, women who were silenced or not believed for over 20 years are now coming out. We're seeing the same thing with Bill Clinton. I mean, we're finally seeing Juanita Broderick come out and say, Hillary tried to silence me. I am 73 years old, and, you know, it never goes away. I mean, those are strong, powerful statements, especially when you have the fact that Hillary Clinton has been running on this, you know, women's rights issues and supporting and telling survivors of sexual assault that their voices deserve to be heard. Well, guess what? She did not stand by these women. She stood by Bill Clinton. This is about her weakness in her character, the lack of integrity, and the continual cover-ups of the Clintons and the Clinton machine.
And you know, Ebony, she was so offended by words of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It seems Donald Trump had a very effective response. Bill Clinton's been out on the campaign trail 3 days.
Yeah.
And he has been asked by Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien and now Kerry Pickett and others 3 times now about this issue.
Yeah. And he's dodging. He's not been effective in an answer to that. And I think there's
he was stammering. He couldn't answer the first time. I never saw Bill Clinton quiet for 5 seconds.
The big dog was a little quiet, huh? Yeah. Here's the hypocrisy that we probably can all agree on. She's also taken money from Saudi Arabia. You know, she's also, you know, saying with her law firm experience that she was advocating for women's, you know, rights around certain issues.
You're making my case.
Well, we agree on this issue. I am no fan of her leadership at all. So again, that hypocrisy, I think, is where Trump can really resonate.
You supported Barack Obama twice.
I did.
Okay.
And you railed for that?
I gave you a pass on the first one.
You did.
All right. But Could you vote for Hillary?
No, not only could I not vote for her, I will not vote for her.
Why?
Because there is something so visceral that I have to her inauthenticity. I do not believe she's running for president for the right reasons. In that ad, Sean, it was such a clear agenda, vote for me because I am a woman. And as a woman, I am offended by that. Like I said, we've had this conversation. Go ahead, Mercedes.
Well, no, and it's also that selling point. It's a selling point she's trying to make. Obviously, the women voters are an incredibly important bloc. It's a majority of the voters in the 2016 election. I mean, it's critical for her. She's basing her campaign on the fact that she would be the first woman president. She wants to play that card. The problem is, and you got to give Donald Trump a lot of credit, because what happens, Sean and Ebony, is that male Republican candidates usually steer clear of even talking about women's issues to a certain degree. And here you have Trump coming out with this ad, basically bringing out the Bill Clinton scandals about women, and he has a point. And guess what? The GOP voters, they're energized, they're excited, they're like, absolutely go after the Bill Clinton, because nobody wants to touch him. But it's very clear that it's, I think, an effective strategy for Donald Trump.
He's raised the bar, and he's showing politicians that you don't need to be so scripted and so timid and so afraid.
That's
anyway,
right.
Guys, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mercedes.
And coming up, we have very disturbing new reports out of Germany claiming that some of the men involved in the dozens of New Year's Eve sexual assaults are in fact refugees to that country. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is here with reaction. Then later tonight,
I got involved with the Republican Leadership Initiative simply because I wanted to be the best version of myself. Working with Lead Right 2016 and Republican Leadership Initiatives not only allows me to cultivate myself, it allows me to cultivate everyone around me.
the RNC out with a new ad highlighting the party's diversity. Also, how will its chairman, Reince Priebus, deal with the establishment versus the insurgent wings of the party? Reince Priebus coming up straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. Concerns over accepting refugees are growing after a wave of alleged sexual assaults and robberies were reported during the New Year's Eve celebrations in the German city of Cologne. Now, according to reports, German police say victims described the perpetrators as gangs of Arab or North African men, and German media is also reporting that some of the men involved claim to be Syrian refugees, although German officials say there is no solid evidence that refugees, in fact, were involved. Joining us now, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, talking about over 100 women, coordinated sexual attacks. It's clear from the people that were there that they did not speak German or English. So why are they, it seems like they're in denial there.
Well, yeah, it sounds kind of similar to the White House, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing about workplace violence and all that nonsense. And the reality is that these refugees are inherently a problem. Because there's no question that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or similar groups will take advantage of an influx this large to slip in, I would say, a substantial number of people. But we now know their game plan. Their game plan is as much homegrown terrorism as possible. This gives them a kind of a big jump ahead. Sure. Being able to do that. If they can get even 50, 60, 70 people in the United States slipped in, they can start to activate some of these sleeper cells.
You know, I was shocked. I was interviewing a guy in Great Britain. Do you know that there are 85 Sharia courts in Britain, and that only 20% of Muslim marriages are actually recognized by the government? In other words, I keep talking about a clash of civilizations. Now, if you grow up in a country where Sharia law is the law of the land and you dictate what a woman in your life wears, whether she can leave the house, whether she can go to work or school or drive a car, are you coming to America? Is it wrong to ascertain, if you're coming to America, whether you want to assimilate or whether you want to indoctrinate? Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. There are things in Sharia law that are completely inconsistent with our basic human rights. And if you're going to apply some modified, modern version of Sharia law just to your religious activities, fine, the way Jews and Christians do. But it shouldn't in any sense override our own civil laws. For example, you can't discriminate against women. Right. So let's say you're a very religious Muslim and you have a candy store, and you decide you're not going to serve women. Well, you should be subjected to the same penalties anybody would be for discrimination based on that.
But interestingly, it seems that Europe gave into the idea that they can be separate. There's almost like within Europe, you know, separate countries.
I mean, we've always been much better than Europe because of who we are at assimilating, right? Going back to the Germans, the Irish, the Italians, the Jewish people, Irish people, Puerto Ricans. We're very good at assimilating. They're not. They never have been. They've always been, distinct countries. And I think it's really hurting them now. But what they can't do, you can't have a separate set of laws within your country that are inconsistent with the laws of your country. The basic laws of our country are free speech, freedom for men and women, the right to vote, the right to be treated equally.
So there's a clash of civilizations, but the dangerous part to me is that our National Director of Intelligence, our FBI Director, Assistant FBI Director, the President's envoy to defeat ISIS, General John Allen, have all said that ISIS will infiltrate. They can infiltrate. That's part of their strategy to infiltrate.
My great disappointment is that we're not engaging in the intellectual debate. There should be a debate about what's the right way for people to live. I mean, is the way people who are living in Iran or Saudi Arabia, is that right? Is it right that women shouldn't drive? We should be engaging in that debate. Our president should be engaging that debate.
Hillary Clinton took a lot of money from these countries that practice Sharia, but she's the champion of women's rights. She hasn't been outspoken against Sharia.
I mean, it amazes me that they will not engage in the debate because it would give us the moral high ground, which we deserve. We deserve the moral high ground. When we fought Nazism, we had the moral high ground, because the Nazis were slaughtering people. They had concentration camps. Well, we have the moral high ground here. What are we fighting for? We're fighting for women to be able to drive automobiles.
It's so basic. All right, let me shift gears on you a little bit. Presidential election, 25 days to Iowa. You're following it as closely as I am. How do you think this plays out?
I think these two votes in Iowa and New Hampshire are going to be much more important than usual. And not necessarily because they're going to pick the winner, but they're going to tell us something about Donald Trump. They're going to tell us, is that tremendous sentiment, which he has, and there's no question that he does.
Biggest crowds,
the numbers on the polls, do they convert to votes without necessarily having the ground game that some of these other guys have? If they do, then he is a very serious candidate and possibly the nominee.
Would you say Cruz is a favorite in Iowa because it's a little bit of a different electorate?
I mean, Donald talks about winning Iowa. If I were advising him, I would lower the expectations for Iowa. Iowa has gone in the last two cycles for the most religious right.
Santorum and Huckabee.
Santorum, when I ran Huckabee, and we all knew it would go to Huckabee. So don't raise expectations. Gosh, if you can win Iowa, that would be one heck of an upset.
He wins Iowa, New Hampshire. But
if he comes in number 2 in Iowa and he wins New Hampshire by a number something like the polls, and then he wins South Carolina by something like the polls, I think...
you think it's over?
Well, I think he's on his way. I mean, I think the only person who has a chance, I think, to upset him in New Hampshire is Christie.
Yeah, but he's only at 11 and 13%. He's still
what he's got to count on. He's got to count on. He met everybody. He talked to everybody. They make their minds up in the last weekend. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So I think he's about the only one who has a chance to upset him there. Mm-hmm. And then,
do you decide who you're voting for yet?
New York comes a little later. I'll decide by then. My goal is defeat Hillary Clinton. Yeah. I probably have the most disagreements with Rand Paul and with Cruz, but I would support
either
them
one
over Hillary Clinton.
Of course.
I certainly would support Donald or Rubio or Bush or Chris Christie. I mean, any other Kasich, Fiorina, you go pick it. We can go. Let's bring Romney back. That's okay with me. I think Hillary. Between now and the election, if Hillary doesn't have a substantial criminal problem, there's something wrong with our system of justice.
I agree with you.
And I think it's going to. And I think if it's not resolved properly, it'll get investigated by the next administration.
All right, Mr. Mayor, good to see you as always. Thank you. And coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
I got involved with the Republican Leadership Initiative simply because I wanted to be the best version of myself. Working with Lead Right 2016 and Republican leadership initiatives not only allows me to cultivate myself, it allows me to cultivate everyone around me.
The RNC releases a new ad showing the diversity among the Republican Party. The RNC chairman, Reince Priebus, he joins us next, straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. Earlier today, the RNC released a brand new ad highlighting the diversity of the Republican Party. Watch this.
I joined the RLI because I wanted an opportunity to make a difference in my community.
Very proud to be a fellow. I've already started organizing within my neighborhood.
I joined the RLI program. It gave me the tools that I needed to be a better leader in the community and to be able to give back.
Here now to weigh in on that ad in the countdown to Iowa, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus is with us. Welcome back, Mr. Chairman. How are you? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Historically, we know how this game is played by the Democrats. Republicans are racist, they're sexist. Poor Mitt Romney wanted to hire them and had their resumes a war on women. They want to throw Granny over the cliff, and they want children and grandma to fend for themselves. How do you counter that? Is that what part of this ad is about?
It's exactly that, Sean, but it's really fundamental. It's understanding that if we're going to win in 2016, we need to have a national party that's everywhere, and where every community, black communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, we need to have the diverse background in our volunteer base so that our volunteers are in communities talking to their own communities about what's important to this country. And so what you're going to see is a national party that's far more competent and far more prepared than ever before with the infrastructure, with the mechanics, which I understand. Mechanics and infrastructure are boring to a lot of people, but what you're seeing is thousands and thousands of people that we're training through the Republican Leadership Institute to meet metrics every day. Voter registration, talking to people in the community, talking about issues, recruiting people to be volunteers underneath those volunteers. There are two things going on right now. The fun stuff is who's the nominee going to be for the Republican Party. That's where most people spend their time. But there's something else going on, which is once we get a nominee, what is that nominee going to plug into? And we've got to be a whole lot better than we were in 2012 if we're going to win in 2016, and that's what this is about.
Let's talk about, we had Paul Ryan on the program the other night. I don't know if you saw the interview, but
I did.
He was very clear. He said, I want to hit the reset button. And he said he wants to get together, I guess 8 days from now, he's going to get together with the Republican caucus, have a conference, and that he wants to lay out on paper and have every member sign the paper their agenda so that they can have clear distinctions between what the Republican Party stands for and the Democratic Party. Do you think that goes a long way to resolving some of the anger out there that Republicans didn't repeal and replace Obamacare, they didn't stop executive action on immigration, and issues like that? Do you think that goes a long way to healing that?
I think it goes a long way, and it's something I know you and I, Sean, have talked about for years. And if you remember this Principles for American Renewal, if you go to GOP.com, you'll see, and we talked about it when we released this, which was what are the 10 or 11 things that we can agree with as Republicans? And what Paul's talking about, and I commend him for it, and I think he's absolutely right, is saying, listen, what are the 5 or 6 things that we're going to do and what we're going to talk about and get accomplished this year as Republicans? The reason it goes a long way is that if you have big things that you believe in as a party, I mean, in the legislature, tax reform, the issues that are affecting our tax code, the long-term debt trajectory facing our country, obviously the military. But if we can agree on 4 or 5 things, big changes that shape the vision in the direction of our country, the smaller squabbles that we have, we can get through. Let me ask you this then. The problem is if you don't have that agenda, you're fighting over the small stuff and everything.
There's a huge divide between the quote establishment wing and more conservative wing of the party. Right now, the 2 leaders in the polls by far are Trump, Cruz, 1 and 2. My question is, if one of them gets the nomination, do you believe, are you confident, because I've talked to some people, some establishment people hate them. Do you believe in your heart that you're going to be able to pull the party together if they win?
100%. And, you know, the unifying thing about what I have to do is that no matter who you're for, everyone can agree that we have to have a national party and infrastructure that has its act together. I honestly, Sean, I talked to all of our leaders in our party. Everyone's going to get behind whoever the winner is. We've got 12 great candidates. We've got a varsity squad out in the field. It's very difficult to make a decision because we've got real serious players that are vying for the nomination of our party. But our party is a private organization that we're seeking the spokesperson and the nominee and the person to lead us to 2016. Whoever the delegates of our party choose, that's going to be the nominee, and our party is going to be behind that person 110% to save this country.
Well said. It's not a time to have measures. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
And coming up, our Ask Sean segment, and we need your help with our big question of the day. Straight ahead. And time for our question of the day. So Hillary Clinton says there's a war on women. Do you agree or disagree? She also said victims of sexual assault have a right to be believed. Just go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, at Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. You've been sending us your questions all day. It's time for our Ask Sean segment.
Mr. Hannity, what is preventing the American leadership from understanding that Islamic radicalization is a true cancer on our American values? It is metastasizing. Considering the recent terrorist attacks, why can't we just totally eliminate its influence from this world? Wouldn't that be more humane than letting more terrorist attacks happen?
It is a cancer. You're 100% right. I think the short answer is political correctness. It seems that there are people that are unwilling to acknowledge that there is an enemy that is at war with us, radical Islamic terrorists, and that they are advancing a caliphate. And until we address that truth, I think, unfortunately, they'll have the upper hand. That's all the time we have left this evening. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Tonight on the record, Donald Trump invading Vermont, stepping into Senator Bernie Sanders' backyard.